Washington Journal continues.
Our guest now is Sarah Westwood. She's an investigative reporter for the Washington Examiner. She's here to talk about the contents of Hillary Clinton's recently released emails and allegations of conflict of interest between her official role as Secretary of State and the activities of the Clinton Foundation. Sarah Westwood, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us what we learned in this latest batch of emails that were released from Hillary Clinton and her top aides.
Well, these emails showed some new examples of donors to the Clinton Foundation going to Hillary Clinton's team at the State Department asking for favors, asking for jobs, asking for access. And these are the types of things that Hillary Clinton was supposed to avoid when she entered a memorandum of understanding with the White House. And the fact that there were so many of these instances that were not disclosed to the State Department in 2014 when she turned over her original emails, and we learned about them only this week, raises new questions about whether there was more access given to Clinton Foundation donors than previously thought.
So was there any evidence of any actual illegal activity occurring, or was this simply inappropriate activity? And what's the difference?
There's been no evidence of illegal activity, and that understanding, that memorandum of understanding she entered with the White House, was not a legal document and it wasn't enforceable. It was just an agreement. So short of breaking any laws, which there's no evidence of that happening, then there's really no consequences Hillary Clinton could face. But it raises questions about the appropriateness of her actions and whether they were ethical, and whether she told the truth about the extent to which donors were given preferential treatment at the State Department. And the State Department's unwillingness to really look at this has been causing some of her critics a little bit of headaches, because the State Department is just dismissing wholesale whether any impropriety took place without opening any kind of investigation.
So what were some of the barriers that were supposed to be in place, the firewalls, if you will, between Hillary Clinton's role as Secretary of State and her role at the Clinton Foundation?
Well, first and foremost, the Clinton Foundation was not supposed to accept foreign donations except from a few key countries, and when they did accept foreign donations, they were supposed to disclose them to the State Department and to have them approved by a board of ethics lawyers. That didn't happen in all cases. It happened in most cases, but as some reporters have discovered over the past year, there were some major foreign donations that were not made public. And she was not supposed to have any role in the Clinton Foundation's day-to-day operations. There was really just supposed to be, like you said, this firewall between her diplomatic duties and the Clinton Foundation's philanthropic work. When you see her top aides, such as Cheryl Mills, her chief of staff, having the kind of involvement that led to, as we learned this week, interviewing candidates for top jobs at the foundation, that obviously raises questions about whether Hillary Clinton's closest aides were still keeping her abreast of what the Clinton Foundation was doing, and therefore serving as a go-between that was inappropriate.
And the RNC put out this statement after the release of the emails today in light of new pay-to-play evidence. Republican National Committee Chairman Reince Priebus called on the State Department to release thousands of withheld Hillary Clinton work-related emails that she deleted and lied about the existence of. These emails were recovered in the FBI's criminal investigation and turned over to the State Department, which is now considering not releasing them until after the election. Reince Priebus said Clinton has repeatedly looked in the eyes of the American people and lied to their face in order to hide her unethical and reckless conduct as Secretary of State while furthering her own self-interest. What does the Hillary Clinton campaign say about the possibility of releasing or even finding any of these additional emails?
Well, the Hillary Clinton campaign wouldn't be involved in the discussions about when to release them, because right now they're in the custody of the State Department. So they really they don't have to answer to the release of these emails. It's the State Department, and that goes to the frustration that a lot of Republicans and Hillary Clinton's critics are feeling, that the State Department has dragged its feet at every opportunity to be transparent about what took place. They're doing so now, and there are thousands of emails that the FBI recovered that are now in the process of being turned over to the State Department. And obviously there's a long process of going through those and redacting the information that is sensitive that has to take place before they can get released. But some of these groups do have a point that the records would shed light on activities that took place. Maybe they would exonerate her activities. Maybe they would raise some new questions. And so the State Department is facing a lot of pressure to get these out in the public.
our viewers can join in the conversation as well. And if you're listening on C-SPAN radio, you can also join in the conversation. Here are the numbers to call. Republicans, your line is 202-748-8001. Democrats, the number is 202-748-8000. Independents, your number is 202-748-8002. You can also send us a question over social media. Our Twitter handle is at C-SPAN WJ. And again, we're talking with Sarah Westwood, investigative reporter at the Washington Examiner. Let's go ahead and take our call from Oscoda, Michigan. Brian is on the line. Brian, I'm so sorry.
Nothing to be sorry about. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's Oscoda, Michigan. Right.
Oscoda, okay.
Yeah, right on beautiful Lake Huron, up north. Now, I happen to hold a security clearance, operational intelligence through our service. When you have a security clearance of a top secret nature, you're custodian of materials. What you have is classified material. It can be confidential, can be secret, or top secret, and that's the main thing we're talking about with Ms. Clinton. When you're a custodian of this material, you treat all streams the same, whether it be confidential, secret, or top secret, because these classifications change. But as a custodian and who works in the intelligence field, you know just by looking at the material itself that it is in those classifications, so you treat them all the same. So this silliness about that it was not labeled or anything such is just ignorance, dumb, lies, whatever you want to call it. The reason you get a top secret clearance is because you can handle these materials, so she cannot have it both ways. She just cannot have it both ways. I mean, this is high school stuff, really. You have top secret clearances right now within your military with 20-year-olds. And the reason they are, and you get all that responsibility, is because they know you can handle it.
All right,
but how you handle...
All right, Brian from Michigan. Sarah Westwood?
Well, Director James Comey of the FBI, when he did deliver his testimony before Congress, he made clear that Hillary Clinton was extremely careless with classified information. But the reason why his team chose not to bring forward criminal charges is because he found no evidence that that information was handled negligently on purpose. There was no evidence of criminal intent, and he said that he didn't feel that, based on the evidence that the FBI uncovered, that was enough to move forward. There are many people who feel the same way as that last caller, that the rules are not written to require intent to move forward on criminal charges. But you know, that's a debate for the legal community about whether that's a requirement in a case like this.
Take a step back and remind us why these emails are being released in the first place and how these revelations came to light.
Well, these revelations first came to light through the House Select Committee on Benghazi. They were investigating what happened in the 2012 terror attack. They went to the State Department to request copies of Hillary Clinton's emails relevant to Benghazi, and when the State Department couldn't produce any, then they started asking questions about, well, why not? And they discovered that the reason was because Hillary Clinton was using a private email server set up in her home. So the State Department went to Hillary Clinton in 2014 and asked her to turn over all of her work-related emails, and she had a team of her lawyers, including Cheryl Mills, go through those emails, produce about 30,000 of them to the State Department. Through a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit filed by Vice News, a news outlet, the State Department was forced to start releasing those emails on a rolling basis. So the ones we have are the ones Hillary Clinton chose to turn over. Now there's another 30,000 that she deleted, claiming they were of a personal nature. The FBI recovered thousands in its investigation that they say were not personal, were work-related. Those few thousand, we're not sure how many, are now in the process of being transferred from the Justice Department to the State Department, and those are the emails that have yet to come out.
And what is the role of groups like Judicial Watch and the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington? How do they play into all of this?
Well, Judicial Watch is it's a conservative-leaning group that is forcing the State Department to release emails right now. They're the ones who recovered the Clinton Foundation related emails that we're talking about today. Their FOIA lawsuit has forced 6 of Hillary Clinton's aides into deposition. So they've been instrumental in extracting information from the State Department. And the other group you mentioned, Crew, they filed a 2012 FOIA request to the State Department to find documentation of the number of email addresses that Hillary Clinton was using, right? Now we know there were several off the books emails addressed. They were told by the State Department at that time that there was no documentation of any State Department use. And that response, in the context of all this new information, has really raised a lot of red flags about whether the agency knowingly covered up the fact that Hillary Clinton was using a private email at the time, or if this was a mistaken response.
Let's get back to our phone calls now. Carl from Berkeley Springs, West Virginia is on the Republican line. Good morning to you, Carl.
Good morning. You know, all you folks out there that believe the meeting between Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch, that they talked about golf and grandkids, you probably still believe in Santa Claus. And you know, everything is wired in Washington, D.C. Whoever's president has the attorney general working for them, and it's a mess.
All right, that's Carl from West Virginia. Sarah Westwood, give us some more background on this meeting between Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch.
This happened in late June in Phoenix. Supposedly the Attorney General's plane was on the tarmac. The former president's plane came on the tarmac, and it was a chance impromptu social meeting. That's how Loretta Lynch characterized it. But the timing of that meeting, just a few days before the FBI closed its investigation of Hillary Clinton without recommending charges, really tainted the outcome of that investigation, because people saw it as corrupt that the two were meeting. They saw it as inappropriate that, you know, the Attorney General, who was about to make a decision on the former president's wife about whether she would face criminal charges, was meeting with him in secret. And this meeting was supposed to be kept a secret. It was not until a local reporter happened to spot the two meeting on the tarmac that this became public. And so that obviously for a lot of people was an uncomfortable situation. And the Attorney General herself did admit that it was not perhaps the best judgment to engage in a private meeting with someone who was related to a criminal investigation.
Next caller is Les from Winnemucca, Nevada on the Democratic line. Les, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to say that I've been listening for 30 years to the right wing of the Republican Party do everything they can to say that, you know, Hillary Clinton is bad and, oh, she's horrible. Oh, they've done this, they've done that. I didn't see anybody investigating all the emails of any of these other former secretaries of state. I don't see any of these people having their families, and everything they do, every sentence, every syllable, everything, cut and dissected and try to find fault everywhere.
All right.
In everything.
Okay, that's Les from Nevada, and we do want to mention this response from Hillary Clinton's spokesperson, Josh Schwerin. He said that the right-wing organization behind this lawsuit has been attacking the Clintons since the 1990s, and no matter how this group tries to mischaracterize these documents, the fact remains that Hillary Clinton never took action as Secretary of State because of donations to the Clinton Foundation. Sarah Westwood.
Well, you know, it's true that there is no direct link between a donation to the Clinton Foundation and an action that the State Department took. What the critics are saying when they look at this is the overall pattern. Each individual occurrence could possibly be explained by individual circumstances. But when you look at the pattern of the donations to the Clinton Foundation and the actions that the State Department took in some cases, it does raise a lot of questions, and it's impossible to ignore that sometimes the donations and the favors lined up. And so that is why this has become such an issue for Republicans, is that maybe one or two coincidences could have occurred, but certainly not dozens.
You wrote a story recently with the headline, 5 Clinton friends who got special State Department access. Who did you find was the sort of beneficiary, perhaps, of Clinton's role as Secretary of State?
Well, these 5 friends that we looked at, these were just people that were mentioned in the new batch of emails that came out this week. And one of them was a man named Gilbert Shigori. He was a Nigerian businessman who was born in Lebanon and was a very generous donor to the Clinton Foundation and has been a supporter of the Clintons' political campaigns dating back to the 90s. And here we have a Clinton Foundation official reaching out to the State Department and demanding that Shigori be given immediate access to the State Department's point man on Lebanon. And he's, demanding that Hillary Clinton's team accommodate him as quickly as they can. And that's the sort of thing that, by itself might not be a big deal to some of Hillary Clinton's critics. But when you look at the fact that he was not the only Clinton Foundation donor that was given, immediate rushed access to high-level State Department officials, that's the kind of thing that raises concerns about whether donors would be given high-level access in a Clinton administration.
But did the meeting with Shigori and State Department officials ever occur?
We don't know. We only have the snippets of the emails, and so that's one thing that the Clinton campaign has pointed out, is that you're only looking at fractions of communications. You're not looking at the overall pattern. You have no idea whether this meeting materialized, and so that's another reason that this has not become a greater controversy, is because we're just getting tiny glimpses at what took place.
Let's hear now from New Kensington, Pennsylvania. Michael is on the Republican line. Good morning, Michael.
Yes, thank you for C-SPAN. Thanks so much for Sarah Westwood's work as a investigative journalist. And my question has to do with the number of investigative journalists, which has declined significantly in the last few years. And I think that it seems to me ironic that the only people that are bringing suits now are Judicial Watch and organizations like that have the clout to force the government to introduce some of these FOIA acts, to expose some of these FOIA acts and things like that. And is there a reason that there are so fewer investigative journalists like Sarah and Cheryl Atkinson and people like that in journalism today?
Well, on the Freedom of Information Act cases, he's exactly right. The law has been enforced in recent years such that it's almost impossible to force the government to give documents unless you have the resources to take the government to court and to bring your request into litigation. And that is the reason why open records advocates have pursued FOIA reform. The president signed it into law this year, and we'll see, if that becomes something that affects the law. But it speaks to the fact that this administration has not been particularly forthcoming when it comes to releasing documents, that Judicial Watch has been in litigation over this specific case for years now. Politico this week received schedules of Bill Clinton's speeches that he gave in response to a request they filed 6 years ago, and they just received the documents on Monday. So it's really difficult for smaller news outlets or freelance journalists to get documents from the government because they don't have the money and the time to take the government to court.
Next caller is Jerry from Baltimore, Maryland, calling on the Democratic line. Jerry, go ahead.
Thank you, C-SPAN, for taking my call. And please don't cut me off, because you seem very much leaning towards a conservative view this morning. I'd like to challenge your investigation as, criminality. What are you trying to do? Expose all of our secrets? How the State Department gathers information? What was Benghazi? Benghazi was a CIA operation that the State Department guy fell upon that went very, very bad. You don't talk about stuff like investigative reporters back in the day. This is not the Pentagon Papers. This is not Watergate, although the DNC hack is. This is Rupert Murdoch, who's been convicted of hacking Lady Di's phones and other people's, using it as what? Yellow trash journalism.
All right, Jerry, we will leave it there. Sarah Westwood, a response.
Well, I don't think that Hillary Clinton would be facing this level of scrutiny if she were not running for president. If she had retired after her tenure as Secretary of State, I don't think that people would be digging through her emails this way. I mean, that's obvious. So Hillary Clinton is facing this level of scrutiny for a reason. People have real concerns on both sides of the aisle that Hillary Clinton may have mishandled classified information. If you look at polls, even of likely Democratic voters, they still support Hillary Clinton in spite of what took place, but they do have concerns about, whether she had an inappropriate relationship with contributors to her family's foundation, whether she did take the appropriate steps to handle sensitive material. And so these are the type of things that she does need to confront if she wants to be president. And so I believe that it is entirely relevant to hold this type of microscope up to her activities.
Next caller, Jack from Champaign, Illinois, on the independent line. Go ahead, Jack.
Hi there. First, I'd like to say that I'm a big supporter of the idea of C-SPAN and watch it regularly. My comment is just, it's stories like this that make the citizens lose confidence in our political system. And that's it.
All right. We'll go ahead now to Mankato, Minnesota. Raymond is on the Republican line. Raymond, good morning.
Are you there?
We're here, Raymond. Turn down your TV.
Okay. You got them staggered.
Yep, you're on the air. Go ahead, Raymond.
I'm on?
Yep.
Okay. I often vote Republican, but I'm more of an independent because I like to vote for the person I can trust the most. Donald Trump gave a speech in New York, and he talked about, you can find it on Politico, it's about 17 pages long, and he talked about all the lies that Hillary has told. And I showed it to my two brothers, and they got in an argument. I brought up Benghazi. They got even more ugly with me because they thought it was the military's fault that Hillary was asleep at 3 a.m. in the morning, and she should have been awake. I believe that the first I heard about the emails, when it came to light, current administration tried to lock up those emails for 75 years. We'd all be dead and gone by then, and it wouldn't affect the election. Now, you said earlier, Sarah, that there are still 30,000 emails that are yet to be opened, and they won't be opened until after the election. I think they should be opened because there may be some sensitive information in there that can affect us and our right to be protected properly.
All right, that's Raymond from Minnesota. Sarah Westwood, how is this issue playing out on the campaign trail?
Obviously, it's one of Donald Trump's top attack lines against Hillary Clinton that her emails could have been accessed by anyone. He likes to joke that Russia probably has them, that Iran has them, the NSA. There's a lot of people that have Hillary Clinton's emails, according to Donald Trump. And Republicans down the ballot are also using this against Hillary Clinton. Now, unfortunately for Donald Trump, he keeps giving Hillary Clinton enough fodder to use against him that this hasn't really been dominating the news cycle. You know, this week we spent more time looking at, what Donald Trump said about President Obama founding ISIS than we did talking about the revelations that were contained in these emails. And that is obviously to Hillary Clinton's advantage to keep the pressure on Donald Trump. And so if he can stay more on message and keep making the case against her methodically using these emails and the Clinton Foundation activities, then maybe this could become a bigger problem for her.
How many more tranches of emails are there still to be released?
That's really difficult to say because the FBI has not made public the number of emails that they have. They've said it's tens of thousands. We don't know if it's all 30,000. Presumably some of those were indeed personal in nature, but some of them weren't. So those are being turned over to the State Department. And in addition, we have emails from the inbox of Huma Abedin, Clinton's deputy chief of staff, from Cheryl Mills, who was her chief of staff, from Jake Sullivan, who was also one of her top national security advisors. They also at times used private emails, and they had to turn them over to the State Department. And these emails this week, for example, included Hillary Clinton, but she did not turn them over to the State Department. Huma Abedin did. And that's another thing that has raised questions about why, if Hillary Clinton did go through her inbox with a fine-tooth comb, did she choose not to share the emails that we're talking about?
Next up, Vita from San Leandro, California is on the Democratic line. Vita, good morning to you.
Good morning. My question is, you spoke about the Hillary Clinton's email stuff has not been one of the stories that's been leading in the media. And that's because no one wants to point their finger at her and actually do the public any good by asking the questions that they should be asking, because they created a narrative saying that she is just about her email. I want to know, how could someone that works in the government have a private server in their house and conduct government business on it? And then also, how did the FBI even not even dig into how did Hillary Clinton allow private lawyers, not government lawyers, to go through her server with that also had government transactions on it. How do they get to decide what is to be given to the FBI for the investigation?
Vita, quick question for you. I see that you're calling on the Democratic line here. Does the revelation of what's in these emails impact how you see Hillary Clinton and how you might vote in November?
You know what? It has already affected me because I do a very good job of research. I am a Democrat from California, and the primary, the California ballots hadn't even been finished being counted when the AP put out the story the day before on MSNBC when Chris Matthews said that they would call the election for Hillary the day before. That takes away democracy in America. If my vote to this day in California, I can call my local registrar's office, my vote, my stuff on my ballot they cannot tell me whether it has been counted yet. And all those delegates from California went to the Democratic convention and pledged for Hillary when people's vote had not even been counted. That's so unfair. So the people's vote doesn't even exist anymore.
Okay, that's Vita from California. Sarah Westwood?
Well, you know what she's referring to is the fact that the AP called the nomination for Hillary Clinton the night before the California primary based on the support of superdelegates, not just on pledged delegates. And that did make a lot of Democrats angry because they thought that maybe the race in California was close, but learning that Hillary Clinton had mathematically clinched the nomination might have convinced some of Bernie Sanders supporters to stay home and might have affected the outcome. Obviously, we'll never know if that was the case because we can't go back in time. But this just feeds into the narrative that has been sort of clouding the Democratic side this entire time, that the system was somehow stacked in favor of Hillary Clinton because, you know, the media was complicit in her victory and all of these arguments that progressives have made. And they're not entirely invalid, as we learned from the emails that came out of the DNC hack. There was some bias among top-ranking officials in the Democratic Party toward Hillary Clinton. And this is the sort of thing that just makes it worse every time we learn about Hillary Clinton's emails because they feed into this overall narrative that perhaps the system is rigged in her favor.
Next up, Peter from Drums, Pennsylvania is on the Republican line. Peter, good morning.
Hello, this is Miss Pete. I'm calling in reference to the emails. I believe they're making such a big issue. The FBI agent in charge found no legal reason to have her indicted. She did make mistakes, and she admitted from day one. The emails were done by Clayton Powell, Condoleezza Rice. That was a procedure they did because it was convenient. It was a mistake, but geez, they make it sound like she destroyed the world. None of her emails were found being tapped into. They were found. They were never marginalized. Everything was done improper at the time, but it wasn't a big mistake. And I guarantee this person you have on today is a Republican, and I wouldn't be surprised she was sent there by the Republican Party to find out all she could.
Okay, Peter. That's Peter from Pennsylvania. Sarah Westwood?
Well, there have been comparisons made to former Secretaries of State Rice and Powell. But it was a different situation. In Hillary Clinton's case, she set up a server that was housed in her basement and therefore entirely in her control. In Colin Powell's case, he used a commercial email account to send personal emails only occasionally, and that's because at the time, the State Department system, the state.gov email accounts, couldn't email outside the department. So if he wanted to email anyone outside the State Department, he had to use a personal email account.
You have to remember where technology was at that time.
Right, because this was years ago. And the State Department Inspector General did find 2 emails in Colin Powell's private inbox that should have been marked classified, confidential, the lowest level of classification. But when we look at Hillary Clinton's situation, she obviously controlled all of these records at the time, and they were emails classified all the way up to top secret. So this is a little bit of a different situation because of the volume of records that she kept outside of the government's custody, and it was much more highly sensitive information. And we don't have evidence that it was hacked, but we don't have evidence that it wasn't hacked either. And the FBI director made that clear that we wouldn't expect to see evidence of a hack in this case, but that the network itself was vulnerable to cyber activity.
James from Akron, Ohio is now calling on the Democratic line. Good morning to you, James, and go ahead.
Yes. Well, it's a couple of things here. I think that the State Department or whomever is withholding these emails is doing Hillary Clinton a disservice. I think it's Republican-led that they don't want to release these emails early because this becomes a story, and it's been a story they've been maintaining for several years. They could have released these a long time ago and let people make a decision. That's one thing. And then I'm looking at the things that were found in the emails, even the ones that they say were classified. Evidently, they weren't anything that was affecting any security of the federal government. Now, we talk about these, the server in her home. Well, prior to that, were Colin Powell and the other people that did have their own private situations that wasn't through the government. Most of that stuff at that time was being tracked by the phone companies themselves. So a private server, I don't see it being that big of a deal, other than the Republican Party has made it that big of a deal, trying to destroy Hillary Clinton, and they've been working on her for God knows ever since Watergate, before she had married to Bill Clinton.
All right, that's James from Ohio. Let's also hear now from John from Stonington, Connecticut, on the Republican line, and then we'll hear from our guests. Go ahead, John.
It was referenced earlier that we don't know enough about the relationship between the Clinton Foundation and the State Department to know that there was possibly a crime committed. But is that not why 3 separate FBI field offices recommended an official investigation be opened into the Clinton Foundation, and President Obama's Justice Department shut that down and prevented an investigation from happening? So couldn't there have been information that we don't have that FBI field agents saw that could have meant there was actual official corruption in criminal activity?
All right, John from Connecticut. Our guest is Sarah Westwood, an investigative reporter with the Washington Examiner. What do you know, or what do we know about the FBI's efforts to look into specifically the relationship between the Clinton State Department and the Clinton Foundation?
Well, we know that the Justice Department has now looked at this twice. They looked at it first in May of last year when that book by Peter Schweitzer, Clinton Cash, came out and first raised these allegations. They decided they didn't have enough evidence to move forward. Then we know earlier this year a bank flagged the suspicious activity of a foreign donor to the Clinton Foundation. The FBI looked at that and thought it warranted a public corruption case, and 3 Department of Justice field offices, like the last caller said, were in agreement that this criminal investigation needed to move forward. They took this to the Justice Department headquarters in Washington, and there was reportedly a meeting of high-level Justice Department officials in which there was a pretty heated debate about whether they should take this to the public integrity wing of the Justice Department and open a case. The nays won out, apparently, because this case did not move forward. But it shows that there is some real concern, even among Justice Department officials who some have criticized of protecting Hillary Clinton. Even these people wanted to move forward with this investigation of the Clinton Foundation because there were real questions about the legality of these foreign contributions to the charity.
Our next caller is Obi from Washington, D.C. on the Independent line. Obi, good morning.
Yes, thank you for C-SPAN.
Go ahead, Obi.
I was just wondering if you can have someone from the Clinton camp on the program to provide some kind of a balanced perspective. Discussion has been a little bit one-sided in favor of unfounded allegations and conspiracy theories.
All right, that's Obi from Washington, D.C. And just to let you know, Obi, we did show the response from Hillary Clinton spokesperson Josh Schwerin. I'll just read it again for you very quickly. He said that the right-wing organization behind the lawsuit has been attacking the Clintons since the 1990s, and no matter how this group tries to mischaracterize these documents, the fact remains that Hillary Clinton never took action as Secretary of State because of donations to the Clinton Foundation. And that's a quote that he gave to the New York Times on August the 10th.
And there's a reason why there's really only one side of the story being told here. It's because Hillary Clinton has refused to give a press conference in something upwards of 250 days. She has been silent on this issue, and part of that is a strategy to prevent it from being legitimized by her addressing it head on. But that silence has allowed the Republicans to really drive the conversation on these emails, and she continually declining to come forward and speak about it. And when she does come forward and speak about it, she parses her words so carefully that some of these fact checkers say that she's not being entirely truthful. That prevents the other side from being told. So it's more her silence that is causing this to be a Republican-driven story here.
Our next caller is Sandy from Lexington, Kentucky on the Republican line. Sandy, good morning.
Thank you for taking my call. I think the problem here is it's not Republican, it's not Democrat. It should be an American problem. Hillary Clinton lied, not just about the servers. She lied about Benghazi. She's been lying all of her political career. She lied about the little girl that was raped, said that by that criminal that she defended and got him out of it and laughed about it. I mean, do we want someone with her character as president? I just cannot believe that the American people, some of them, are even considering her. But you know what? The same people that put Obama in there twice are going to be the same people that will elect Hillary Clinton, I'm afraid.
All right, that's Sandy from Kentucky. We hear your thoughts this morning. And just to let our viewers know, we did have a segment in which we invited Lanny Davis, who was formerly special counsel to Bill Clinton, to come on Washington Journal and speak about this very issue. You can watch that on cspan.org if you did miss it. We're talking with Sarah Westwood, who is an investigative reporter for the Washington Examiner. Let's turn now to Vienna, Maryland. Angus is calling on the Democratic line. Angus, good morning.
Yes, it amazes me about this email thing, and
okay, go ahead, Angus.
It just amazing to me about all this email is going on. If you as an important person, I should have sense enough not to send you an email on a line that I think that anyone could tap into. But yet, all we could have is Hillary with the email. How about the people that she was involved with sending the email and receiving the email from? Don't you think they should be a little responsible about it too?
All right, that's Angus from Maryland. Sarah Westwood, tell us about the rules and regulations around the use of a private server. Was that something that was allowed under State Department regulations?
It was not allowed under State Department regulations. That was made clear in an Inspector General report that was released several months ago. The Inspector General went back and looked at this closely because there were questions still hanging out there because Hillary Clinton was saying, it was permitted under the rules. And so the Inspector General took a look at this and said, this was explicitly not allowed by State Department policy. But it wasn't against the law, right? It was against the interagency rules about how State Department officials were supposed to conduct themselves. Employees had been disciplined for this under Hillary Clinton for using private emails to communicate diplomatic sensitive information, but she didn't break criminal laws. And so that is sort of the distinction that has prevented her from being indicted when the Justice Department looked at this, but has had her, be reprimanded by the State Department.
Next caller is Greg on the independent line from Jacksonville, Florida. Greg, go ahead.
Good morning. I am a 37-year watcher of C-SPAN, and my comment very quickly. It seems as though I'm watching Fox News this morning. It doesn't seem as though there's a lot of objectivity, and certainly the calls that are being taken, but I'll be very quick. Ms. Clinton, as one caller called for Maryland, was the Secretary of State. The whole operation in Benghazi was a CIA operation. That hasn't been covered very strongly by the news media, and particularly probably because, again, the CIA operations are top secret. The second thing is the Clintons have been probably in the news cycle from the Republicans for over the last 35 years, and still no criminal charges, no other charges have been brought down other than, again, the administrative impeachment of the president, which he was tried in the House of Representatives and the Senate and was acquitted. So this whole scenario that's going on again with the news media in particular wanting to be right about, again, this whole email thing, not only is a media-driven, right-wing driven activity, but certainly is being picked up by the mainstream media. And surprisingly, again, with all due respect, as much as I love C-SPAN, after 37 years of watching since 1979, I'm just very surprised. Thank you for taking my call.
Well, again, this is a central issue because of Hillary Clinton's candidacy for the president, and because, you know, when you're running for president, every little thing you say and do comes under the microscope. And this was a pretty big one, that classified information was mishandled. That is a concern that she can pretty safely move on from because the FBI has cleared her of criminal wrongdoing. But these allegations that Clinton Foundation donors were afforded special access to her agency, that under her leadership, it's relevant to voters, including a lot of Democrats, as we've heard, because this is the way that we could likely expect her administration to be conducted. And so you have to take a look at this and in the context of, are we going to put this person in the White House, and are these sorts of relationships going to persist? And again, there was no illegal activity that took place, but you have to question the ethical realities of what happened.
We have time for one last caller, and that'll be Sandra from Grapeland, Texas, on the Democratic line. Sandra, you're on the air with Sarah Westwood. Go ahead, Sandra.
Yes, I would like to say to the young lady that's talking, I agree with the gentleman that called in that this say that this seems to be like another little witch hunt from the Fox News. But also, what makes the lives of the people in Benghazi that were killed any more important than the 5,000 men that were lost, women and men that were lost in the wars? Get over the emails.
All right, that's Sandra from Texas. We hear you this morning. Our guest, Sarah Westwood, will have the last word.
Well, you know, obviously the Benghazi situation has been played pretty hard by Republicans to the point where I don't think that it's as much of an issue for her anymore. With the conclusion of the Select Committee investigation, with the conclusion of all the congressional investigations, you know, that's not something that you hear really talked about anymore. But the other situations where there are still loose ends, these are things that you can expect to see litigated beyond Election Day.
Sarah Westwood is an investigative reporter for the Washington Examiner. Thank you so much for joining us this
morning.
Thanks for having me. Coming up next.